Hi, so this is Charity, and I am here to talk to you about using Inq-ITS with your students in this distance learning environment that we are all in. So when you log into Inq-ITS the first time, you would see a video here that hopefully everyone has watched, and then down below that are some helpful resources. And then you can see a few various things over here. Now, I have this pretend teacher account because I obviously want to respect student privacy. And you can see that my account is Google connected and that I have 4 Google classes showing in the system. If you connected with, let's just say, your personal account and you wanted to switch to Google, you would go to settings. You can change your email address here. Under sign-in information, you can connect to Google, or you can connect Clever. You can even change your password if you need to. And then here you can manage your classroom sections if you wanted to connect. You created those, and then you need to go back in and connect them with Google or whatever. Now, let me talk to you about assigning activities to students. So when you first log in, we want to encourage you to start off with one of the tutorials. The basic tutorial has qualitative data, so absolutely no numbers, so much more simple for students. And then the advanced tutorial is quantitative data, so including numbers for students. But each of these tutorials take about 15 to 20 minutes for students, and they are a great start to the system. So I'm just going to show you the advanced tutorial just so you can see why we want students to start in this way. So the tutorials actually start with this welcome to Inq-ITS, and this is the only place that the students get this. So if you send one of these activities out to your students and they come in, this is the first thing they're going to see, where we talk to them about making a goal, making sure that their hypothesis has an independent variable, a dependent variable. They collect their data to get their results. They make a claim, support that claim with evidence. Imagine that. And then they write up in a claim evidence reasoning format. Then when they're done with their welcome to Inq-ITS, then they get an introduction to this activity. That's what this is. It's a quick introduction to this activity. And then what happens is they hop into the actual activity itself. And so I would encourage your students, let them know ahead of time that this lab is scored. They will be able to see their own scores when it's done. Your scores show, for a teacher, it shows the numbers and percentages, and for students, they see the number, they see stars. Yeah, 1 star is yellow, 2 stars is light blue, and 3 stars is dark blue. So hopefully they read this goal. So height of the tower, so fully height of the tower, distance traveled, hopefully they read that, and then they say increase. And I would advise them to read this goal and make their hypothesis in line with this goal, because we do not have Rex the tutor turned on here. So students can move forward with an untestable hypothesis if they just make random choices. So we encourage students to read the goal before moving forward and make sure their hypothesis is in line with their goal. Now, this is really the reason why we turned Rex off in this first activity, because students just really enjoy playing around. They enjoy just making all kinds of different selections. And if Rex was turned on, Rex only lets them play a couple of times before Rex is like, okay, seriously, let's get down to business, okay? And so if we want students to have a chance to play around, we went ahead and turned Rex off so that they could just experiment with the system for the first time and see what they think. So I said the height of the tower, so I'm gonna go ahead and increase the height of the tower, see what that looks like. Okay, there we go. Okay. And then from here, I can move into the analysis section, claim. So if I increased, I want to go back my height of my tower, then total distance traveled, then, oh, let me actually check that. So in these trials right here, I kept the sled size the same. I kept my ramp roughness the same. The only thing I changed was the height of my tower, and the distance increased. So increased, and that was consistent with my hypothesis. And this is one that students really struggle with. Students never want to say does not support hypothesis because they don't want to be wrong, right? We don't want to be wrong as humans. So I get that. But you can get a perfect score in the Inq-ITS system even if you're wrong, you were wrong in your hypothesis. If you do a good job the whole way through, you can refute your hypothesis and get a perfect score, because ultimately we hope that that's what scientists will do, right? If they start investigating, let's say, a drug to cure a disease and they realize that that drug doesn't work, it makes more people sick than it helps, then we want them to refute their hypothesis and publish that data. And so that's why we've created it in this format. And then they would move in here and they would write up their claim, evidence, and reasoning in this format, and they would submit that. So that should take students about 15 minutes, and then you will get their assessment data. And so I would highly encourage you to start off with either the basic tutorial, again, that's qualitative, so a bit simpler, or the advanced tutorial, which is quantitative. And then when you go to assign this, I've used this a bit with Google Classroom, so that's why mine are populating here. But if you haven't used this the first time, you can just type those in. I would actually encourage you to just type in like first, second, third, fourth, because having the period in there actually makes it longer. If you want to publish this to Google Classroom, you can set your due date and click publish, and then that'll just push out. Now, if you don't use Google Classroom, then, I should actually assign something. Let me go ahead and assign just to one class, just so you can see what that looks like. So I'm just going to assign this, and because I'm not putting a date or publishing, this is just going to go as a draft to my Google Classroom. So none of my students will be alerted at this time to that. So if I use Google Classroom, I can go in later and update this either here or from Google Classroom and push that draft out. If I don't use Google Classroom, I can do this next step. I can copy this and I can email this to students or use really any LMS. It doesn't matter. And then now that they have that link, let me show you what that looks like. I'm going to use an incognito window, because if you just put this up there, if you put that link just right up there in your browser without an incognito window, you're going to get an error, because our system has sensed that you have a teacher account, so it would give you all kinds of weird errors. By using an incognito window, I'm able to look at this as a student, and as a student, this is what happens. And if they have never been to Inq-ITS before, they'll say, I need to make my account. And then it'll ask them, is this your teacher? And so they'll actually see their teacher's name. Yep, that's me. And then they can sign up with Clever or Google, or they can sign in with their username. And if they use Google or Clever, it's super, super fast to get them in there. And then they'll just be popped right into that activity and get going. And then the next time they come in, it'll be super, super fast, particularly if they use Google or Clever, because they'll just be popped in to the activity so they can get going. So if you use Google Classroom, you can push it out there. And if you don't, just use this shareable link and you can push it out there. Let me see. I created a second copy. Let's just say that my students started and they created an untestable hypothesis because they didn't read the goal and they just went, and I was like, you know what, I want to give students a second chance. What you can do is you can actually assign the same activity again. You go into Explore Labs and you can just turn around and assign it again. The only thing is after you assign that, like you can see here, I have the right here, I'm going to highlight it right here. I have the exact same activity twice to the same class period. And so what I did is I just went into details and I clicked edit, and I actually added this number 2 in here, just so I know that's my attempt number 2, as my students have a second chance to do that activity. So that's something you can do if your students are like, really, we want students to practice being scientists, and scientists follow through with a bad hypothesis and they refute it, right? They use evidence to refute that hypothesis and say, I was wrong, I learned from my experience. But sometimes students don't need to learn how to be scientists. Sometimes they just need to learn how to read directions. And if that's the issue, then you can just go in, Explore Labs, and reassign the exact same thing, and then just change using details and edit, just change that title so that you know for yourself that that's the number 2 attempt. And then this is my like encouraging you to not type the word period or class or whatever into your titles, because some of these activity names are rather long, and I've just made them crazy long by including the extra big word period in there. So once your students get started, you will see completed. So I have 0 students who have completed this, but 1 student who's actually, when it says assigned, it means actually logged in and created an assignment. And when you push this out to Google Classroom, you're pushing the link to the assignment. So it's not, our system is not sensing and pulling any student data. Our system is merely sending that link. So once your students actually follow that link into our system, that's when they will appear in their Students tab here. And when they complete an assignment, what you could have them do is you could have them grab a copy. Actually, here, let me show you really quickly. Let me grab this. I'm going to show you what this looks like from a student standpoint. So sorry, give me just a second. I am going to log in just as this kiddo. This is a pretend account that I have. And yeah, I apparently used it enough times. Okay, when you're a student, what you could have your students do, whether you're using Google Classroom or another LMS, is you could ask your students either when they're done, they could see their progress, and you could ask them to take a picture of that and post that. But you have this information available to you as well. But the students have a really nice lab here. If they click see my work, which usually populates pretty quickly, students could do, could print this, just Control P or whatever, print to a PDF, and they can attach this in Google Classroom or a different LMS. What I actually had my students do was use Excel or use Desmos and actually graph the pertinent data here, which gives students practice with, looking at their data, which columns am I looking at? What should I graph? What goes on the x-axis? What goes on the y-axis? So when I had my students do this, I actually had them print this out and attach that in Google Classroom, and then along with a graph either from Desmos or Excel, just to show me that they understood. And if they found that they had made any big mistakes, like when they saw their progress, I would have them review their lab and give them a chance to do a quick write-up when they submitted it to say, hey, I made this mistake. Maybe it's as simple as they didn't read the directions. Maybe they chose to play around, or maybe they actually learned something. Maybe they were confused and they thought that they could only do one trial and then move forward. And maybe they realized, holy smokes, I should do more than one trial. And so I would give them a chance to correct themselves in that way. Okay, so let's say my students have been working, they're showing up here, and I want to see how my students are doing. Now, if I want to watch how my students are doing in real time, I can open up this Inq blotter, and I can use this. This isn't going to show anything because I don't have any students working. But if I had students working right now and they were struggling, I would be seeing alerts here. So I don't have to have this tab open. I could be off doing whatever. I could be correcting anything, doing whatever I'm going to do on another meeting. As long as this tab is open, if I get a message from a student, I could pop over here and I would be able to see the alert as to what they're struggling with, what their scores are for that day, etc. And if I didn't see an alert, I could go to students and I could find Bobby Smith and I could see what's going on there. So Inq blotter, very, very helpful. Now let's say that they're all done and I want to look at my reports. Oh, hey, this is a good reminder. Something I like to give to students is this claim evidence reasoning rubric. Just when assigning the task, kiddos, even if they're upper level high school, they say that they're good with claim evidence reasoning, but let's be honest, they get to this reasoning section and they don't know what to write. So I like to attach this rubric so that they have a little bit of help knowing what to write here. So, got myself off track. So please attach that when you're assigning to students for the first time. Now let's say my students have been working and I want to view my reports. So I can come here and I would be able to see, according to class period, all of my work. And then if I click into this, and I'm sorry, the names will be clickable soon. We're just a little bit behind in our development because things are a little bit busy right now for some reason. And so just click on this magnifying glass to actually look at that. And then once you click on that magnifying glass, I wanted to look at Julian, and Julian has worked on these 4 labs, but Julian is me, so he's really struggling to actually finish activities. And I can look in and see the scores. So Julian, and I could do this big plus over here and see everything, but I just specifically want to look at ramp. So this is the independent variable, size was the independent variable, distance was the dependent variable. I can see how Julian did, and I can actually look at his, his lab. I can see how he was doing and his progress, which is not typically what we would see, right? Typically, we would see a student start out orange, little light blue, and then slowly they'd start to get more dark blue. That's a more typical, but again, this is just me playing around, not an actual student. Now, if I had, because I have never had the luxury of having classes of 2 or 3, I've actually had classes of 30 plus. So this download button is your best friend. And so you just download that and you can look at the reports that way. And I'm going to dig into reports a lot more in my inquiry reports webinar that I'm going to do tomorrow. So I'm going to leave reports for a little bit. This is the little things to let you know. This number have completed, this number has enrolled. When everybody has completed it, that's enrolled in it, it goes green. Dark blue is awesome, light blue is getting there, and orange is they need some help. I already talked about settings, help and resources. So very, very helpful page. Please give me some grace there. We're really busy and I'm trying to update things as quickly as I can. And so if you see something that's out of date or needs to be fixed, please send me a nice note and say, hey, Charity, I know you're busy. Those things are nice to hear. And I thought you might want to know that this is outdated. I'm like, oh, thank you for letting me know. Trying to get those things updated as quickly as I can, but lots of them have been updated. So please check this out. We have lots of information that's really helpful. You can quickly see some alignment. If you have some state-specific standards that you're wondering about, maybe you're from Texas or something else, you can see those state standards there. And you obviously saw how to attend a webinar, and here you can request a quote. And exploring labs, that's what I was going to get back to. Okay, hopefully you do a tutorial. It's a great way to have students start and get oriented with the system. Once you look at their scores from the first tutorial, you can decide whether you want to have all of your students, some of your students, or none of your students move on to the second tutorial. That's your decision. You're the teacher. I will tell you that the first tutorial in both basic and advanced has no Rex the tutor. Kids can just go pure assessment. In the tutorial number 2, there's Rex the tutor just in the hypothesis phase, so he helps make sure that they have a testable hypothesis. And then in tutorial number 3, Rex is there throughout the entire lab, keeping them in line. So you can decide how much of those you want to use. From there, let's say that you just wanted to hop on in and assign something like waves, because waves are fun. And I always seem to really struggle with whether I could get to waves or not with my students in the spring. So this is great. So first question, do you want Rex? And this is your choice, right? We have lots and lots of data. If you go to our main page, you click on research, lots and lots of data about how Rex helps students develop their critical thinking skills faster. That being said, if you have students who are lacking in grit, who really have a hard time struggling. This is my 3-year-old. Maybe some of the rest of you are dealing with this, but my 3-year-old has decided to interrupt my webinar. Not surprising. I love you, buddy. Can you go with Daddy right now? Mama's on a call. Thank you. Okay. So you have the choice. Would you like Rex to help your students? So if you want him to, do it. If you feel like, you know what, my students are lacking in grit, I think they'd get frustrated by Rex trying to help them, then you can choose no Rex. You can choose whether you want them to have the multiple choice pre and post test. Some people want their students to have that extra practice, and some feel like they don't want their students to have more multiple choice. That is your decision. You're the teacher. And then You can decide whether you want to publish in Google Classroom, whether you want drafts and get that link, or however you want to assign it. And then you will see last chance, and then you click assign and move forward. Okay, so you know what? I think that that's it. That is all. Oh, I'm just going to say this report an issue button. If you ever have a kiddo who says they're having a problem, you can direct them here or yourself, and hopefully the students can do it themselves. First and last name, email, type of device, and then this is a big thing, attaching a screenshot. It's very helpful with students if we can have the entire picture, because quite honestly, if students are having a problem, it's almost always because they've attached some brand new game to their Chrome browser that we've never heard of before, and we haven't had a chance to optimize our system for that brand new game. So if we have that picture, we can dig in there and figure out what's going on and make sure that our system doesn't interact with that new fantastic game that just came out for Chrome browsers. So I think that that is it. If you have any questions, my name is Charity. I would love to speak with you and help you get oriented. And tomorrow I'll be talking about reports. And then on Thursday, I will be talking about some best practices, including using Ink Blotter with students. Please do not hesitate to reach out if you have any questions or if you need anything. I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for tuning in.